All right, here we are, another Friday afternoon of Green Rush Live. Hi, everybody. I'm the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, Jimmy Young, and sometimes host of the Green Rush Live show. I am joined every week to talk about the business of cannabis with leaders and influence makers. And in this particular case, at the top of our show, we're going to welcome in Doug Miller, who's become a regular. He's now a regular contributor to our We Talk News, taking a look at the cannabis stock market, as it were. How's it going, Doug? Good to see you.
Very good. Nice to see you today, Jimmy.
And we want to welcome in a good friend of the Pro Cannabis Media family. He's Michael Correa. He is the Director of Government Relations for the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association. And Michael, it is good to see you and a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Jimmy. It's always great to be here. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Michael. How are you today?
Doing wonderful.
Yeah, you see, you could actually drive to DC, Doug, to see Michael. I'd need 8 hours to get there, or 9 hours now. So just for the record, if you want to hang out with Michael in DC, you can drive there. All right.
You guys need to come down in May when we do our lobby days. Do a show down here in May.
Well, now that's an interesting idea. I didn't even think of that one, Michael. We're gonna file that one away and put it on our whiteboard for the to-do list. You know what I'm saying? Michael, it's a new Congress, it's a new year. Is it the same old arguments over and over again for you guys?
Well, it's a new Congress, and you have to remember, I worked on the Hill for about 13, 14 years. I've seen the majority go, the minority go, and it goes back and forth. Whenever you want to get something done in DC, it takes many years. And so patience is the one thing you need. I'll be honest with you. I started this 9.5, 10 years ago, and I thought this would be an 8 to 10 year process. I didn't think 9 years later we'd still be talking about safe banking. So on that end, I'm slightly frustrated. The year ended, we didn't get safe done, and part of me was like, okay, I'm ready to give up on safe. It's just not going to happen. But we have a new Congress. We have a new year. It is a new year, Jimmy. I'm happy. For the first time in 3 years, the Capitol is opened back up. The doors are open. You don't have to have meetings. You can just wander the halls. It's great. Stop by, talk to people. It's wonderful. Stop by a bunch of offices this past week, checked in with a bunch of members, and it gave me some excitement where at the end of the year, I was like, okay, this is not going to be the best Congress, but I'm feeling motivated that we can still do something in the next 2 years.
I know none of us have gone through a divisive nation like we have right now, and there seems to be a lot of labeling of people, whether they be this side or that side. I'm not even going to use the labels, okay? How difficult is it to cut through the BS and get them to focus on an issue like safe banking, which, 7 times in the House when it was a Democrat-controlled arena. Now what?
Well, I mean, in from a political standpoint, it's pretty hyper partisan in DC. Both sides don't like dealing with the other, don't like being seen with the other. And the last thing either side wants to do is give the other side a victory. And so that's one of these things where it's really hard, where something could be so close on either side. And one side is saying, why would I want to give fill in the blank a victory on this issue? And I guarantee you, Mitch McConnell last year, regardless of what he felt about safe banking, the last thing he was going to do was give Mitch McConnell a victory. And so it's one of these things to try to cut through the partisanship. But luckily, cannabis is one of these things. If you look at people who've sponsored cannabis legislation over the years, you have, right, you have left, you have extreme right, extreme left, you have center. And so it's one of these issues that I think can be uniting, unlike many issues in DC in this partisan time. But it's getting stakeholders, it's getting the advocates, the activists in line, and being able to have a message of not the perfect bill, but what's the bill that Congress can get done, and everything has been safe over these past years, but because it doesn't go far enough, that's not going to happen. And it is, you want to beat your head against the wall of not only, when something doesn't get done, but when something is so close and people are expecting a perfect bill, they're expecting the next cannabis bill to solve every problem associated with racism, discrimination, cannabis. And it's just it's a really high threshold to pass, especially in this Congress. And we need to be more realistic of what are the victories we can achieve in this Congress, whether that's research, whether that's medicine, whether that's VA, whether that's banking, whether that's not arresting people, whether that's expungement. There's lots of different, bites at the apple we can do without getting this home run legalization solving all these problems. And I wish some of our advocate friends, our activist friends would be more realistic in their approaches of what Congress could do and what they were willing to call a victory.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, I'm willing to let you jump in here. I want you to jump in here and ask Michael, have a conversation with Michael, just so you can get used to it. And just so you know, Michael, Doug is an expert on stocks. So he watches them, he day trades, he's a regular on that, and now he's doing a stock report for cannabis stocks that are actually available to buy and trade. So Doug, now that I've set you up and given you a few seconds to think about a good question for Michael, go ahead.
I actually had something in mind already. How
Good.
much do lobbyists still play a part in Washington? Because for many years we had the pharmaceutical lobbyists that obviously didn't want things to go through, but now you see pharmaceutical companies jumping into the space. So I can imagine that they still lobby against it because there's money involved in both sides of it. But how much does it really play effect now? And as far as with the banking, you would think they would have lobbyists like crazy in there just trying to pass it along, because you're talking billions and trillions of dollars worth of revenue that can pass through banking. So what kind of play do lobbyists really have with that?
Well, it's I gave the example as I used to work on the Hill. A lot of times when you worked on the Hill, most of the staff were, newly 20-something-year-old staffers, fresh out of college. They're working their way up. They're overworked. They're underpaid. They came to DC to make a difference. But the one thing they don't have is that institutional knowledge, that history. And a lot of time that's a learning experience. And that's where the lobbyists come in, is being able to have that history. I first came to the Hill in 1996. That was 26, 27 years ago. I was on the Hill, and when I talked to people about the process, it's understanding that. And, both you guys, like I started going to Hill meetings this past week. There are so many new staffers that I haven't got to meet just in this new Congress. I think there's 80 freshman members, and they're learning cannabis for the first time. And they're on the Hill. How do you learn cannabis? What are you going to get, the Cannabis 101 book? You're going to go to lobbyists. Lobbyists are going to knock on their door. And if they're good, then they're going to tell you the history, and they're going to lay everything out there for you so you can form your opinion. I'm not a fan of, when I was on the Hill, of lobbyists that just gave you one side of the issue. It's your job as the staffer to decipher the information. The lobbyist's job is providing the information. And so I think a lobbyist is very important. And people look at the lobbying profession as we have a bunch of money in our hands and we shuffle it to staffers and they do what we want. If I could do that, I would have passed safe banking 10 years ago. If it was that easy, we would have gotten it done. It just shows you what a long process this is and how much educating you need. But on that end, you mentioned pharma. Pharma's there. Pharma spends millions and billions of dollars lobbying around the issues that are important to them. The banking industry, when I started 10 years ago, was not really in this, but has gotten more involved with this. And it's the bankers, the credit unions, the bigger banks. They're up on the Hill. And when you talk to Hill offices, they'll say, yeah, I've heard from the bankers. Yeah, I've heard from this group. Yeah, I've heard from that group. It makes it easier for members of Congress to support something when they have just a massive amount of stakeholders who are behind something. There, in all my years on the Hill and all my years off the Hill, I have to, one of the proudest moments and one of the great things I've seen are the stakeholders who are supportive of SAFE. It's pretty broad based. It's pretty amazing. We get credit unions and bankers working together, and they hate each other. And the fact that they're working together on this issue shows what they're willing to do. But it's the fact that no matter what we do to lobby on this issue, and no matter how good a case we present, if there are people in power, someone like Chuck Schumer, who feels like this is not enough because he has interest, he wants happy activists, advocates, that it's not going to get done. And you have to build a case to those important people to say why it's important. We built a great case of why SAFE is needed. That's given. The problem is there are people who want it to go farther, and that's not what SAFE is there for. SAFE is there for incremental reform, not to solve all the problems. And we've run up against that wall, but I'm not going to give up until we can get this over the finish line or legalization happens. But, to directly answer your question, I think it's a really important part of getting stuff over the finish line, because that's where the money is, to keep this in the public sphere and to keep it in the media and to keep talking about it and having people on the Hill knocking on office doors. Because I've had Hill offices say when they don't hear from people, they just put the issue in the drawer and they focus on the other 100 issues that are a priority. I hate to say it, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but that's so true in politics. That's why you need a constant drumbeat on this issue, and it constantly needs to be in the press.
Yeah, well, I like to say I follow the money trails, and it always gives you the answers. And it just amazes me that the money's being pumped in by lobbyists and everybody. A lot of people have that interest to have it legal, and yet they're still can't figure out a way to do it. And there's people on both sides of the parties that actually would benefit from it. Obviously, they invest in everything. So, and the money talks. So it just amazes me that they still can't figure out how to get the safe banking passed. And we have lobbyists out there trying to pass things. And usually, and that's like you had mentioned, if it was so easy where people were paid off, this would have been done years ago.
Yeah.
And it just, I'm baffled that they still can't figure it out. With all the people trying to figure it out, they can't come to an agreement on something.
And I want the readers to know, and this is important. Safe banking didn't pass because cannabis prohibitionists stopped it. Safe banking didn't pass because cannabis activists didn't think it went far enough and didn't bring it up for a vote. And I'm pointing at Chuck Schumer. This could have easily been solved. Whereas if he really wanted it, he would have prioritized it. He would have got the stakeholders together in a room. He would have got the inch senators in a room and said, listen, what can we do to get this over the finish line? And he would have got it over the finish line. If he didn't spend 18 months of the past year talking about his bill that finally came and then ran out the clock at the end of Congress, it's frustrating. And a lot of people, it's inside the Beltway, how the sausage is being made. A lot of people don't know. But I gotta speak the truth about what's happening. It isn't because people are stopping cannabis. It's because it's not going far enough. And we need to keep working on our friends to build a good case. And that's our friends in advocacy. Those are the activists, to get them more comfortable around this issue. And they just haven't been comfortable around SAFE because they don't think it goes far enough, which I get it. It doesn't go far enough. But at the same point, it was not intended to solve all the problems. Those are going to be for the next day and the next day and the next day of issues that we need to attack and tackle, but you can't do it all at once. And that's where, people are a little too idealistic and not realistic enough when it comes to reform. And maybe in this Republican Congress, in a Republican House, that could temper some of the expectations, and maybe we can get more incremental reform, but that'll time will tell, over the next 18 months, we'll see. But that's what I'm going to be spending my next, month doing, is reaching out to offices and talking about strategies and priorities and what we can do in this Congress.
I asked Morgan Fox, your old friend, our old friend, current friend, whatever, this question, and it kind of lends exactly to what you just said. Do you think the Republicans will emerge as the party that will enact reform so they can become the heroes, as opposed to the Democrats who've been pushing it to the point where, now it goes in one ear and out the other? Someone like a Nancy Mace from South Carolina, for instance, who did introduce a legalization bill of sorts last year, can she then take control and perhaps drive it through the House and get it at least looked at by the Senate?
So, one, you bring up a good point. I don't think Republicans are going to be heroes on this. Republicans as a whole through the conference don't really care about cannabis legalization. You can look at it in how many co-sponsors are on bills. But in the House Republicans, you have Nancy Mace, you have Dave Joyce, you have Tom McClintock, you have Brian Mast, who are good Republicans on this issue, who are going to be working on leadership to get a hearing, to get a vote and move bills. The problem is there's 200 plus Republicans, and 4 of them, last time I did my math, 4 is not a majority. And you do need, a good critical mass. And that could be something, where the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, may be looking at this issue going, why am I gonna bring up a safe banking bill when this is more of a Democratic bill? So that's something we need to think about. But Republicans don't have to go any farther than safe banking. They could say we did safe and that's it. They don't have to go to equity and diversity and expungement and all these things that Democrats want. And so in that situation, it's possible that, the House could produce safe and that's it. And that's our victory versus a Democratic Congress where their expectation is they need to do more. But we're going to be working on that. I know at the end of Congress, Nancy Mace filed a bill on 280E. That's an incremental bill. I stopped by Dave Joyce's office, Nancy Mace's office, some other offices, and there's some interest in bringing SAFE back and seeing what the Senate does. So it's a wait and see right now, but they just organized. They got a lot of other priority issues right now. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And that's going to be the theme, I think, of the whole Congress in the next couple of years. We'll see what happens, if anything can happen, Michael.
But I'm happy because the Capitol's opened up. And now I can bring my computer, go to the cafeteria, sit there and just start seeing people and doing more events and just being around and getting to know people and talk about the issue. That's exciting because it's been 3 years. I mean, I am a lobbyist. I need to be out there. It is great. And like I said, NCIA is going to be doing our lobby days in May. It's going to be an exciting time, and we're not giving up. I'm not giving up just because it's a Republican Congress. You have to remember, the only true, I think important cannabis reform we've gotten over this past year was the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment. That was 8 years ago, and that was in a Republican House. And that got done. And so something could possibly get done. We can't give up hope yet.
Yeah, the Republicans are happy with singles, and the Democrats want the home run. Again, another sports analogy. That's it, right?
Cannabis, yeah.
Yeah, as far as cannabis goes. We did a poll at the end of 2022, like a lot of groups do in media, the top 5 stories in cannabis last year. Now, without me listing 18 of them, okay, which is what we had on our list, what do you think was, according to the people that took our poll, and we had a pretty good turnout, a few dozen anyway. They were all brilliant, by the way, who entered that. What do you think is the top story? What was the top development in cannabis and news over the last 12 months?
Well, I think it's what President Biden did when he made his announcement. Not that it was so historic or he couldn't have done it his first day in the office. It's the fact that, 80-year-old Joe Biden said something on cannabis, put the power of the White House behind this, said, we as a country need to look at this. The federal government needs to look at this and start that process. That's never been done before. And regardless of how many people's records were expunged because of this, or it doesn't matter. It's the fact that the President of the United States made a historic statement on this issue that could pay off, next year or the year after. That's pretty historic. So to me, that would be the biggest story around this from a political lens, because you get the power of the federal government. This is what we've been fighting for years, and it came from Joe Biden. It's not like he's been Mr. Cannabis Reform President over these years, and so that was truly something to me.
Yeah, and you hit it on the nose, Michael. That was the number one story.
For the record, I didn't know what it was, so that was a yes.
And really and truly, now let's go back to what the president did say, because one of the items, besides the federal release of 6,500 cannabis convictions that nobody seems to know one, but it was the idea that yes, federal reform doesn't equal state reform and the descheduling. And supposedly the DOJ has started looking into descheduling, rescheduling. Any idea where that stands?
No idea where that stands, but it's the glacier pace of the bureaucracy. And I use the example, the Farm Bill passed 5 years ago, and we're still looking for hemp regulations. And so just for people to understand regulations, it's a bureaucratic process and it takes years. But unlike hemp, the president wants this, and that's the ability of the president to get on the phone to talk to some of these cabinet secretaries and say, give me an update, what's happening, what's going on, could speed up the process. You know how bureaucracies are. It can get slowed down or sped up depending on if you want to move. And so I wouldn't expect anything in months, but at the same time, things could, the news cycle, it could build up support on something like this. And this is what I mentioned earlier about you need stakeholders behind it, just being in the news, being talked about. We know where the public is on this. I mean, it's 70% of the public wants this. It's a slam dunk and a home run. Strange things happen in presidential elections. So we'll see, 2024, that could be an exciting year that, maybe he wants to do something historic and he does something around cannabis. It wouldn't surprise me, but, it's one of the things we're going to be working on.
I can't believe that cannabis is a political pawn.
Yeah.
Right? It really is. That's where we're at right now. And that glacial pace that you mentioned as far as bureaucracy goes and things, we call that cannabis standard time, right? CST. It's like dog years, right? It just takes much longer than the industry wants for sure, but it's the pace of, would you say, progress in Washington, D.C.?
And I look at parallels, and you look at gay rights movement. I mean, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in the 90s, and it was 25 years later where the Supreme Court was making decisions. I mean, can you imagine working on that issue for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? And you can't give up hope every time a state does something positive and then a court does something negative and then something positive. It's a tennis match going back and forth, but they're making progress to the point where you're going to have equality, and it takes time. We're going to get this over the finish line. I thought it would have taken 10 years. It's obviously going to take more than 10 years. And I'm still here, I'm starting my 10th year in this. So unless someone's out there who's going to hire me big bucks, I'm still doing this and enjoying it.
There you go. Well, we enjoy your presence here on a regular basis.
I'm going to read Doug's stuff. Tell me where they invest in stocks and make a bunch of money and retire early.
Go ahead, Doug. Give yourself a plug. What's the website?
I have a website. It's called what is it called? Dougie Fresh Picks is where
nice.
And then it has all my links to where I post everything. I post everything all day online for free, and I just enjoy reading stock charts and yeah, I love it all. I love stock charts and cannabis.
Right. Well, we have one out of two isn't bad because I hate looking at numbers. I hate looking at charts. I don't like Excel. The whole 9 yards is not something for me. That being said, Michael, again, thank you so much coming on short notice. Appreciate it. Keep in touch, and we're going to circle back to you about perhaps doing something live in Washington, D.C. during lobby days in May. Do you know the exact dates right now by any chance?
Yeah, May 16th to the 18th, those 3 days. So probably be 17, 18 will be the big stuff. But that's still 4 months off. You have plenty of time to organize.
You should see what goes on in this room and what we do. It is amazing. We're starting a new live show on Wednesday nights from the only legal cannabis social club lounge in Massachusetts called the Summit Lounge, and that'll be January 25th. So we are always looking for that last minute thing. We'll get it done somehow, some way,
I love it.
I love pressure. I love deadline pressure. Michael Correa from NCIA, thank you so much. Say hello to Aaron and everybody down there. We're going to take our 4:20 break right now. I think based on what I saw in the chat room, people are already enjoying their Friday afternoon 4:20. We'll have more talk show of Green Rush Live after this. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God, Jonathan Edwards.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
And welcome back to a Friday afternoon edition of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled business cannabis talk show here on Pro Cannabis Media. And a reminder, please like, share, and subscribe. The last time I checked on YouTube, we were about 71 subscribers away from 11,000. And I appreciate every one of those 11,000. And if you have not subscribed yet on YouTube, please do. And of course, tell your friends, family, and even your foes about it, because you know what? We all need a little more love in our world. Am I right? I'm Jimmy Young, yes, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, joined by Doug Miller from New Jersey, the Garden State, and now joined by an old friend, Richard Guerra. He is with Sensi Magazine and has been for a number of years, and he runs the New England operation, the New York, New Jersey operation too, Rich, right?
You know, if it was the time, then I would. Yeah, I'm the guy in New York and New Jersey. Yes.
That's where I was going. Right. I know you'd like to split yourself down the middle at least and go New York one side, New Jersey the other side.
I would, but you know, I guess I'm close enough to both, and I do go to Jersey once a week at least. So
there you go. So, Rich, as you look at the state of the industry in 2023, there's been a lot of articles and newsletters and commentary out there about the doom and gloom. You know, prices are falling, the sky is falling. What is your assessment of where we are at, and how much of an impact has it had on your magazine?
yeah, absolutely. You know, I started focusing on the industry in Colorado when it was really in its heyday in about 2016, 2017. You know, learned Massachusetts, my, you know, kind of home base was coming online, eventually moved back to that market as it was kind of really getting started. And then over a year ago, moved to the New York market and started to pay attention to New York, New Jersey, all the while, you know, going to MJ Biz and national conferences and having friends in other markets. I've, you know, considered California and a lot of West Coast states and all, you know, and most recently Michigan and Oklahoma. Sensi, my company that I work with, we do events and we do publications there. So I definitely have kind of tried to keep eyes on it all. It's very kind of challenging and difficult. And so to answer your question, I think it really depends a lot on what market we're talking about. And that's just the way this thing is working and set up to this day. It's, you know, what 2023 holds for California after the year they had last year, and what it'll hold for Colorado and Michigan, and eventually, you know, potentially in Massachusetts, all kind of at different points on the timeline of maturity or saturation, and then price droppage. And even New Jersey, I read something today, they've got $70 eighths there. So, you know, it's like, it kind of just depends on, I think all year, it's really going to depend per state. You know, they've got moratorium on new licenses in some states. I know they're proposing that in Colorado and Michigan to try to, you know, stop the bleeding. And on the Massachusetts side, where I mostly focus my time, and that's where most of my clients and you know, when we do business, Jake Boynton and I, yeah, we're hearing it, we're feeling it, we're watching prices drop. There's a lot of cannabis out there that's going nowhere, and there's, you know, concern. The bells are getting the alarms are being raised. At the same time, it's not quite where maybe Michigan or Colorado is, and I'm a hopeful, positive, optimistic guy. I can only hope that, you know, some things can get worked out. So yeah, did I answer both questions or one question?
You did a great job. You filled a couple of minutes, and that's really what I'm most concerned about. Cannabis standard time. Nothing happens fast in this industry, especially at the federal level. And I am still encouraged with what I'm reading about on the state level with Minnesota. And I believe even in Tennessee, I believe they just introduced a legalization bill down there. Are you confident that green rush, we even named the damn show after it, will continue in some capacity moving forward? That's what I want to hear, is positive confidence.
You want to hear positive confidence. Yeah, okay. Right. Well, I'm going to answer the question, and okay. I think the answer is yes. I think in why that is, I think is mostly in part that the medicine, the plant, the commodity that we're talking about, that people are excited about and in a rush to try to maybe start a new business or bring in some new taxes, the financial benefits, the actual medicine itself, like having that access for so many of our people and our citizens in these states where it's always been pretty inaccessible. As soon as it starts to open up and as soon as that starts to even become available, the excitement just builds from there. And you do end up with prices ended up, dropping because there's just so many consumers and there's so much buying happening. And if anything, the rush will probably, like every other state up to this point, be a little further. I think the rush is a little too much of a rush is what we've seen. You look at each one of these states, including Massachusetts, the rush itself turns out how many licenses, how many businesses, how many small businesses, how many people devote their lives and years of their time and loads of their money, investors into a market's launch and growth. It's kind of too many across the board. If only there was maybe a little less of people's money and a little less licenses going out and a little less small businesses devoting years of their life, that we wouldn't feel quite as maybe these moments wouldn't be as intense, I guess.
Right.
Honestly, I think that's why New Jersey still has our $70 ACE, because they are very strict. I know people that have tried to get the license, and I mean, it's almost just the big MSOs really, and for the most part. And yeah, it's very, they keep it that way, I think, for a reason, because they don't want it to be saturated. Of course, they could have just blew open the doors and had dispensaries everywhere. I know I live in a town where Curaleaf opened. They're one of the biggest and the first to do it in our state. And now all the towns around us are proposing to have dispensaries. So obviously it's going to be cutting into their profit margins and everything like that. And but yeah, it's very slow in this state, like you've been saying. And so I think the rollout process of it being that slow has kind of kept it with our supply and demand, to be honest. And I mean, I drive by Curaleaf every day. There's a line outside. It's pretty impressive that there's still a line out there. And so the demand is obviously there. But like you said, it just so happens that it's the industry that everybody wants to seem to invest their money into right now and jump in. And they hear cannabis. They think every company makes $1 million. They don't understand what the overhead of this stuff, what the overhead of growing is. And you have to have the quality product to make anything quality. So to have that quality grower, you're going to pay quality prices, and people don't want to pay quality prices anymore for almost anything. They want the best of everything for as cheap as possible. And when that happens, this is what you start running into issues. People start growing abundance amounts and then it doesn't move. So I think New Jersey capped it like that, but it'll definitely change, because like I said, there's people getting new licenses every day. So
and joining us now, and again, Kara, no worries. Kara Crab-Burnham is with us. We're just happy she made it in because another one like Richie, who actually made the trek out to Wellesley when I first started in the weeds to do a podcast with me. So I really appreciate the fact that we're A, still alive 3-4 years later, and B, you're still willing to come on and talk with us. Kara, great to see you.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm sorry for being late. My apologies.
You'll do a lap at the end of the show. Just run around the desk a few times. No, I'm only kidding.
I'll pay my penance.
I know who you are. Let's let our audience know who you are, what you're up to, and your legacy, Kara, because you do have a legacy.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. But I am Kara Crab-Burnham. I run a consulting business called CCB Consulting, and I work with operators that are moving from provisional license to commence operate, throughout different states. And I co-founded Elevate Northeast with Beth Waterfall and Tashonda Vincent Lee. And We are a female-founded nonprofit for the good of the cannabis industry. We gave away $200,000 just last December. I have a focus in cannabis education. I teach the workforce training program. I developed and I'm one of the teachers of the workforce training program at Holyoke Community College. I'm glad to say we've expanded our faculty. So I don't have to teach all of the classes all the time. So yeah, I've been in cannabis since 2009-ish, and I don't know what else I would do with myself.
There you go. Well, you did get married, and congratulations on that. Okay, so there you go. Kara, I've already asked Richie this question. I'm going to ask you. Everywhere we look now, it's doom and gloom. The green rush is over. What is your read on the state of the industry right now at the beginning of 2023?
It's mids. Like, the product is not quality. Like, if it was oversaturated, we'd have too much good weed. We just have too much weed. Like, it's not. I think that the Massachusetts cultivator who's under 20,000 square feet has a far superior chance of seeing his business operating or her business operating in 10 or 15 years than the 100,000 square foot facility vertically integrated. It's not going to be a sustainable model. It's going to be all craft locally because it's just the only way Massachusetts can make that work. We can't compete with Humboldt outdoor California 12-foot trees. Although when that happens is a whole other can of worms. You know, we want to talk about, what's the state of the industry, how the states affect, and it's not even relevant with federal loosening of laws because the states have to agree on what's allowed between states. So federal government says, great, it's legal. So we get banking, we get insurance, we get to chill out on the security stuff. So cost of business goes down generally, but we can't move product between states when California's testing regulations and Massachusetts testing regulations are completely different. So who the hell knows what's coming?
Well, you know, it lends itself to discussion, talk, bitching, moaning. This is the kind of thing we like actually at Pro Cannabis Media because we run talk shows and share knowledge with people. Richie, you've heard her assessment.
Yeah, interstate commerce is what it's been on my mind. It's been on what I've been talking about. Myself, I've been in legacy since I was a teenager. I was also involved in, certain things when I was a kid, and I'm technically social equity in Massachusetts. And I've been in New York City for the last year, like hanging out with only legacy people and watching the legacy market and learning about how it will interact with this legal market. And I saw a quote from Jeffrey Hoffman, a lawyer here in New York, saying in an article this week that, legal industry's got to learn how to incorporate legacy, and there's got to be more of a play there. But I say all that because as I still have conversations with people who are moving cannabis not in a legal way across the country, there's things happening where like legal cannabis is getting made in California, and it's winding up in other states and Oklahoma getting sold as legal cannabis in Oklahoma, if you can believe it. Like, this kind of thing can be done between, illegal operators and legal operators. And so it's just, I think that's one of those things that I want to see relaxed, although Kara makes a great point. What is that even going to look like, and how much of a shit show will it be when the time comes when one state's trying to move cannabis from California out to Massachusetts or whatever? But it still feels like it's got to go down, and we've got to start moving in that direction. At least for that's what any person in California particularly, or Oregon or whatever, would tell you. They're chomping at the bit to get their product out here. And if what you're saying is, I assume, Kara, you mean the Massachusetts market has mids cannabis, and that the quality is not really where it needs to be. And I agree.
I have
Maine, maybe not.
I have a theory. In Massachusetts, when an operator cultivates at greater than 20,000 square feet, the quality of the end flower immediately declines at a very steep rate. I don't know why, but I am committed at this point, 2023, to only purchasing from cultivators who are under 20,000 square feet. So that's just my new personal rule, because I want to smoke good flower, and when they get that big, they just don't get, the plants don't get the love.
Something I kind of remember, I've had a lot of lessons slap me in the face over the years of hanging out in the space. And when I was in Colorado and there was outrageous amounts of dispensaries and grows and product, and it was just so flooded. There was a range of quality there too. And the bigger guys like the Green Solutions, like the ones that had huge square footage, they would have issues with their, like you would hear about mold and mites and like weird stuff in the flower that was actually being sold. And so it just, and I've also cultivated for a year myself. And I think once you're trying to do something on that scale, it is hard to really get consistency and to get, quality cannabis done and maybe even safe or clean cannabis. That was what I was privy to out there. And I haven't heard a whole lot of unsafe cannabis hitting the market or, moldy stuff in the Massachusetts market, thankfully. But yeah, I think it just lends to your bigger canopies. Maybe if you got like the top dogs in cultivation, but they're not really even in the legal market. Some of them, like.
And that's
Richard,
the thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Doug. Sorry.
No, I was going to say we have that same thing here. I say it all the time. We have an MSO, Curaleaf, and their main thing, and this is one of them things that you're discussing, Kara. They're a huge operation. They have so much quantity and they have to pump it out. They don't take the time to cure the flower properly. Your name's Curaleaf, and you don't cure the flower the whole thing about grow. I mean, anyone can grow things. And that's what I was trying to make the point earlier. You kind of piggybacked on everything I was saying. The cost of growing and having these great growers, they don't want to be involved in these huge operations. It's impossible to try to do it and try to find good help to do these. And you have to have knowledge. That's what people don't understand. You have to be super knowledgeable and know what you're doing and really love it and care about it 24/7. And it takes a lot of time and money to grow quality product. But again, like you said, there's tons of product lying around that no one wants to use because you can't make quality products from them.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
The wholesale market right now is, sorry, Jimmy, the wholesale market right now is seeing $100 to $150 pounds of failed flower for extract that can be remediated, and $200 to $300 a pound for wholesale product being extracted that's 20 to 25%. And then they're seeing $900 pounds go into pre-roll. I mean, unless you're the small craft cultivator and you have the small batch, you're not going to be able to get that $4,000 a pound, 8/4. So you're not going to get that $4,000 a pound price point.
Right. That was at the highest part of the market, so to speak, at that 4,000 level, because I know where it is now and it's not there. I want to ask you guys, all three of you, this question about interstate commerce, because you guys brought it up. And my goodness, my old pal, David Rabinovich, has been railing about this for years, writes about it. You're starting to read him now because his stuff is getting picked up. And I'm pretty sure he's back here next week with our old friend, Kurt Dalton as well. But isn't it hypocritical or even illegal that the edible world that can replicate a recipe from one state to another and send those cultivars over, you can replicate concentrates and edibles in different states that come from other states. So, but you can't move the flower. It has to start with the seed. It has to be grown here, follow the recipe. And then you have interstate commerce, because I've seen chocolates
licensing deals. Yeah.
Licensing. I understand licensing. That's the whole point. It's a licensing, but why can't, to me,
Deals
it's
are
like
great. Think about a micro business that's got their hands tied where they can't buy more than 2,000 pounds of flour annually in the Massachusetts market. They can't expand their business. They've maxed out cultivation. They can't even sell that business. What can they do? They can do a licensing deal with other manufacturers and buy pounds through their metric account and keep their companies growing until the CCC figures out how to switch a micro business into 2 separate licenses.
Right.
They're critical right now.
I'm glad because I want the industry to survive, obviously. But to me, it's hypocritical. It's like, wait a second, you can do that, but you can't move the flower. And we both know, wink, wink, that there's plenty of flower being moved interstate to state in this 2023 time. It just, come on, who's kidding who here, right?
it just opens up opportunities for every cultivator, every cannabis licensed company in any state to do other things and make business, make other kind of money happen, make other deals happen, get rid of excess product. Like if it's not moving in this state, then get rid of it somewhere else. And in the end, it just allows for more revenue to be generated and avoids having products, even if it's the low level stuff, like sit around and go to waste. And, you know, it just would make a big difference. It'd make a huge difference. And we need that because, like you talked about earlier in your other segment, and we don't even need to get into, realistically, there's, even with this banking act, and that who knows when that's going to go down, but you know, whatever, it will take so much, it's going to take so long before anything is actually passed, that it will free up these tax and just various financial restrictions that all cannabis companies have to deal with. Right. And so we have to figure, this would do the trick. I guess I'm an advocate for it, 2023. But it's, again, how do you even, I guess maybe my question, maybe Carrie, you could answer this, but you know, is that something that needs to be decided by the federal government, or is that a thing that can be decided state to state? Like,
absolutely not. The cannabis doesn't transfer state lines. The federal government keep their nose out of it. The federal government keep their nose out of a lot of stuff. But like, it's no product is crossing lines. That you're just sending over processes, and you're hoping that your new partner doesn't screw it up.
That's in licensing. I'm saying, like, if we wanted to get Cali's weed shipped to, you know,
if
New York.
we wanted to get Cali's weed shipped to us, then Cali's we would have to pass state. It would have to pass state muster for testing, and it would also probably have to go through a new license type. I imagine some kind of distributor that would collect it, unless it transferred directly into a metric account holder. But does that mean that how difficult does that make transporting cannabis between BioTrack states and metric states? Because not everybody's in a metric state. Like there's a lot of things that come up when we talk about what it is to move between regulatory bodies.
Is metric the biggest tracking system that's adopted by states, guys? You're all nodding, yeah.
Yes, but they're not the only one.
Right, and like when you dominate a market, you are a target to those underneath you. So a lot of people don't like the metric tracking system.
Metric makes their money.
What's that?
They make their money. Like they charge you for everything. They got annual fees. You're paying for every one of those tags. You're paying like you're just paying. They have done a great job. They being the man, okay, are doing a great job of retarding the start of the industry and the growth of the industry.
I think they control the regulatory bodies on the state level. Like I saw it in Colorado. I was like, wait, what's this regulatory thing? And then because I was learning as I was going in there, and then I was like, okay, metric, sure. And then I get to Massachusetts, and I'm like, who? All along, whether it's Colorado, Massachusetts, New York, I'm like, who are these people that are making these decisions and, like, you know, holding the keys? Because for the most part, they've made pretty asinine decisions half the time, at least, in terms of just a thriving market, or just something that, you know, is respectful to some extent. It's like I don't see a lot of them. I don't know. It's like I guess I'm anti in some ways. I wish I wasn't, but we lost Kara. Are you there? Wait, she muted herself. Let's see if she can come back. Something came up. Oh, there we go. Hey,
sorry, my son is screaming from the upstairs that the rice beeped. So before he thinks the house is going to burn down.
Well, if you need to go take care of him.
He's good. It's got a set for it's rice.
Okay, there is no more difficult job than parenting a child, and someone is a stay-at-home dad on this show, and that would be Doug Miller from New Jersey. And you know, I tell you what, I have a ton of respect for anybody. I don't care what gender, if you don't have a gender. Okay, if you're taking care of a child, it is absolutely the biggest responsibility any of us have ever had, and the toughest job. So, but what's happening in New Jersey, as far as a new state, and we have another new state in New England now. Connecticut opened up for adult use sales this week. New Jersey has been open for a few months. New York opened up 2 weeks ago. And by the way, the reviews of the legal weed that was sold at that dispensary that opened in New York City, they are getting ripped for the quality of it. Something like, I don't know, $35 for a pre-roll or whatever it was. And the guy goes, it doesn't even get you high. I mean, this is the issue because Kara, I mean, obviously a connoisseur, you understand, and now you understand 20,000 square foot of canopy and under, you'll get decent quality weed. Is that something that people you can ask now, right? You can actually ask where you got it, what farm it came from. I was at CNA stores the other day. They have 78 or 80 varieties of different strains available in the pre-roll world. I mean,
yeah,
there's plenty of options, but it's being a smart consumer, right, Kara?
It is. I mean, you can ask in Massachusetts, if you go into an ME, a marijuana establishment, and you ask to see, like, they have to show you this label on the side. And it has to say that it was lab tested, and it has to have the weight. We have to have when it was packaged and when it was harvested, when it was tested, and when its expiration date is, and then the cannabinoid profile. So you can ask all those questions every time you go in. I'm one of those annoying retailers do not like me. I go in and I go, yeah, so I place my order online. I've already looked through your entire menu. I have subs lined up in my head, but I'm going to need to see each of the products you're going to put in this bag for me before I leave with them. And I always send something back.
Yeah. And by the way, when the bud tender asks you, are you interested in indica or sativa? I'm like, man, you don't understand how it works, do you? And they're like, what are you talking about? I go, please, it's terpenes. It's about the terpenes, the mix of the terpenes, the quality of the terpene interacting with that plant. Okay. So anyway, it is what it is.
Like everything else, it's not binary.
The fact that we're bitching about the quality of legal cannabis in 2023 is an unbelievable thing, okay? It really is.
Problem.
Good problems to have. I say
good problems
all the time,
to have.
I'm so glad I could walk around and smoke and no one bitches at me or locks me up for it anymore like we were when we were kids.
Right. Absolutely.
And I was in New Hampshire the other day. You got to be careful.
News item, 70-year-old grandmother in Texas got stopped with 200 pounds of weed in her trunk. And obviously Texas, here's the thing about Texas. Delta 8 is legal in Texas. Delta 8 gets you high. Okay, it does. It maybe doesn't get you as high as, your 80.
It depends on whose Delta 8 you're getting, because I mean, some of the stuff is just crazy. You could tell it's not Delta 8. They're pumping regular Delta 9 THC.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Either way, I get confused sometimes whenever I try it. I'm like, this is way stronger than I expected.
And the testing is a little crazy. I know. I have a company too, so you can send the same product to 3 companies. You're getting 3 different results back. So it's just the way it works. Whose results do you trust, or whose are accurate? So it's just one of them things that it's just a lot of gray areas, and you have to be consumer smart and really think about things when you're out there purchasing.
Absolutely.
That's such an important factor when talking about the federal legalization too, because like the Food and Drug Administration has expectations for the dairy industry, for the meat industry. You're getting this test. This is the procedure for that test. This is how you report the results for that test. With all the states having different regulations just in testing, like that's going to put how many labs out of business that aren't equipped to manage whatever the federal government decides. So then we're all shrunk down to God knows how many labs left to manage an entire national industry. Like there are things here that weren't well thought out from the beginning that are going to cause delays in implementation.
Watching the development of the industry from its illegality to infancy to toddler stage has been fascinating. I'm interested to see where it's going to be in 5 years, 10 years from now, and who's still going to be surviving and being around. And, at least, and I know New Jersey doesn't have it, at least Massachusetts is a homegrown, okay state. You can't even grow it in their backyard, right, Doug?
No, they actually just mentioned it the other day. Murphy had just said something about it, but they're not going to pass it anytime right now. But I was just reading that he had mentioned something about it, and we can't grow anything.
Yeah. And you know what? That the whole development of the industry is going to be fascinating. And each state's making their own mistakes in the beginning, hopefully learning from them, and maybe might change some of the regulations to make it easier on the industry. Look, 280E, if that goes away, that changes the dynamic in the industry, right, guys? We all know that.
That's a
So-
very big understatement.
Right. And you would think that would appeal to one side of the aisle or the other. I'm not going to go into the name calling because I don't like labels, and I think our two-party system is broken. It just is broken. They just don't like each other. They dig their heels in, and if something you said and I don't like it, okay, that because you said it, I'm like, it's like a sandbox now. That's what's going on in our political system. Anyway,
And it seems like it affects obviously big and small, every company with products and alike. And the big guys haven't had a great run so far up to this point. They seem to have not met expectations at all. And they, all you hear is like not happy investors and my big takeaway, just doing what I do in 2022 and talking to, every company I can think of and just trying to, get in front of the right people and mostly to discuss marketing, but the turnaround and not just marketing, but even hearing about the turnaround and really all levels of leadership at the MSOs is outrageous. And I think that another thing I've kind of took away from that is that they hire non-endemic people whose resume shows that they took, PepsiCo products or whatever else, and they expanded to, however many markets around the world. And these people, once they get the job and they take it on to be an executive of these MSOs in cannabis, they don't have a clue as to how to figure out how to expand the product into other markets. And they do a pretty shit job of it, really.
Right.
I haven't
Absolutely.
seen much positivity in terms of, and so that not only at the big MSOs is there issues when it comes to who's pulling the strings and who's getting hired and who's keeping the jobs. Same thing at the regulatory body. It's like, is there enough people in New Jersey running that office? Is that why they don't want to deal with home grow, because they just can barely handle what they got to handle? And then who are they hiring? Are they even people that understand cannabis? And a lot of times it seems like they aren't. And
They don't.
That's
Hey,
a big issue. Is the leaders in cannabis and business and in regulation do not know cannabis.
That's right.
That's what we gotta
you have
change.
business people, you have cannabis people. You don't have the cannabis business people yet. They're learning by doing, and they're behind, and this is what you have to do. All right. Hey, we're a little up against it a little bit. Richie, how do people find out about Sensi Magazine, and what's your next event coming up?
Yeah, sensimag.com. You can check out our latest issues in Colorado, Oklahoma, Michigan, and Massachusetts up there digitally. Any of those states, you can find the magazines at retail shops. We in Massachusetts, that's my focus. We've got a February 28th event in Central Square at La Fabrica. It's a brands and retail B2B networking event. And you can find that out on LinkedIn or hit me up. Richard.guerra@sensimag.com.
There you go. Kara, what are you working on?
You can find me at ccbconsultingllc.com, and you can find all of my fun and favorite things to do at www.elevatene.org.
Please say hello to Beth Waterfall. Wish her a happy new year. We're going to take a break.
Will do.
We'll come back with Stu Zakem and Sam Milton. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission in the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
And welcome back to a Friday afternoon edition of Green Rush Live, the regularly scheduled, really live business of cannabis talk show that we produce here at Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, our regularly scheduled podcast that actually started in 2018 with a gentleman who happens to be joining us for this half hour. His name is Stu Zakem. Stu from Bridge Strategic in New York. Good to see you. Welcome to Green Rush Live.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's great to be here and great to see you and Sam, who I haven't seen in quite a while.
And Doug Miller's on this program as well. Doug's from New Jersey, and he's working with us on a regular basis now. And he studies stocks. That's all I can tell you is if you need any stock tips, ask Doug. Right, Doug?
Hey, listen, Jimmy, he comes from Jersey. How could he be wrong, right?
That's right.
What could be wrong with that?
Well, and Sam is at my second state, my second home state, even though I was born in New Jersey, grew up in Massachusetts. Maine still has a very special place in my heart. Sam Milton is with us. Hi, Sam.
Hey, good evening. How you doing, Jimmy? Hey, Stu. Good to meet you, Doug.
Hey, Sam, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with what you do too, Stu, but I really am fascinated about what Sam does because I really believe that the industry has an obligation to be as efficient with their own energy as possible. And I'm actually visiting grow houses now where I'm actually seeing them recycling their water, recycling their energy, creating their own energy. What exactly is your, I know this is your special place. So tell us a little about what you do and how is the industry doing with their efficiency?
Yeah, sure, Jimmy. No, it's a very good question, and basically the way I like to look at it is I help growers grow more for less. So I really make sure that they're taking advantage of all the opportunities that they can out there to reduce their energy costs, reduce their environmental footprint, and increase their profits. And by the way, also hit all those ESG targets, environmental and social and governance targets, which will make them good companies to work for and invest in. So yeah, I kind of look at all these things for them, and bottom line, make sure that they are basically getting paid to do well.
There you go. I like that idea. Stu Zakem, in New Jersey, you're a man of many, many, many people who love you in New York City, that they just had their opening day, Stu. Perhaps were you there to see that?
I was, Jimmy. Of course. You think I'd miss that?
No, I knew it. That's why I said yeah. What was that like? And I've been hearing some of the reviews of the weed quality. And I mean, again, it's a novelty. That's what happened in New York more than anything else.
Well, so Housing Works is the name of the dispensary you're referring to. Mm-hmm. And they're open in the East Village in a former Gap store. New York State was trying very hard to make their own self-imposed deadline of opening a legal dispensary by December 31st. Yeah. When the licenses were announced in November, right after MJ Biz, they put enormous pressure on a lot of those people to get their stores open so they can make their self-imposed deadline. And Harmony was one of the only one that could make that happen in a very quick time. Pros and cons. Pros, yes, there's legal cannabis to be bought in New York State. People lined up as expected. You had the same shot that you see every state whenever the first dispensary opens. The first guy is the guy who hasn't taken a bath in a year, and he has a big bud in his hand, and it's all wonderful. And once again, I commend Housing Works for being able to make this happen so quickly. The consumer, however, doesn't have much of a choice there. Selection will keep on growing. They are using only New York growers as per the law, which is wonderful because there's a lot of independent farmers out there who've been sitting on stock waiting for the legal dispensaries to open. The state officials turned out in full force as expected. The store itself is true pop-up. It was white space with just stuff thrown in there. I'm sure far away from what the final look will be. I'm actually involved in another nonprofit dispensary that is opening on February 13th, right adjacent to Union Square, Broadway and 13th Street. That's called the Union Square Travel Agency, a cannabis store. And they're going, it's a great name because if you think about what cannabis does help us travel. They will be opening a soft launch on February 13th and with an ultimate major full-time launch in about 6 months after that. That store is going to have a much different feel than what Housing Works done because we have the luxury of an additional 6 weeks to get it into shape and to really make it an experiential experience, and redundancy there, where the consumer comes in rather than just like stuff being put out there because you got to sell it.
Absolutely. Sam, I'm glad you're back. I think you popped out, probably a Wi-Fi issue. It happens all the time. Welcome back. Thank you for making that effort. In Maine, it's been an interesting market because of the federal decision pretty much allowing interstate commerce in there. Am I right? Isn't that what happened up in Maine? Because everybody's all excited about, hey, look what happened in a federal court. You know, all of a sudden this could open up interstate commerce.
That's it. I don't know, Jimmy. I think you're plugged into more than I am. You know, I know there's a lot of unintended interstate transfer, you know, between some of the main growers and out of state. You know, I think people out of state are you know, I don't complaining a bit about some of the main product, you know, kind of getting into you know, consumers, you know, down there. But the fact that there's like a federal judgment that came down that, you know, is kind of granting some sort of interstate trade, you know, for the main cannabis, that's news to me. I'd love to hear more about it. But as far as I know,
subscribe. Hey, if you follow Weed Talk News, we've been covering that. We do a great job. And by the way, that news show will run at 6 o'clock at the conclusion of this program, anchored by Elena Pinto. Stu,
Jimmy, on that part though, interstate commerce.
Yeah.
You know, the New York, New Jersey area is going to be a hot thread for that when the New Jersey dispensaries open in Hoboken and Jersey City. The licenses have been awarded. There's many licenses that have been in those two towns, and you can only imagine the foot traffic that will be coming in from New York over the PATH train, which is interstate commerce. I highly doubt that the police are going to enforce that. The PATH trains are going to reek. There's no doubt about it. But you know, in New York, the taxes are operated differently than they will be in New Jersey. In New York, it's going to be measured by the amount of THC in your product, whereas New Jersey is basically charging the same sales tax, 6.7%, that you pay on other products with a 2% surcharge for the municipality that they're in. So it's still 8%, which is a lot. So I think that interstate commerce issue will certainly come up, and who's going to get the revenue? I can imagine, since New York and New Jersey fight about everything anyway, it's only going to add to that.
Well, you've got another New Jersey resident on here with us, Doug Miller, and I hope the two of you guys get a chance to meet if you haven't already. Doug, what's your opinion of the New Jersey quality of the New Jersey cannabis?
Well, it depends on what dispensary you go to. I believe one of the best dispensaries is Breakwater. It's like in the middle of the state in Cranberry, and their products excellent. They have great growers there. You can tell they really care about the product. I live in the same town. I could almost throw a rock and hit Curaleaf, which is one of the biggest MSOs in the state. And I say it on here often. The quality could definitely be much better. I mean, it's known to have issues. They've had mold issues. They've had just about every issue, and yet they have a line wrapped around the door or the block, and yeah, they just turn over it's just quantity, and that's what it is.
And also, you know, Doug, they sell to every dispensary in the state.
Yes.
So, because they have a 200,000 square foot grow facility down in South Jersey, and to your point, I've told them directly that their weed sucks. Not a way to make, but they asked me, I said, it sucks, you know.
I've actually talked to some of the executives too, and I've told them the same. I'm like, yo, man, literally, like you should just hire like a really good professional grower from out west and bring them in to oversee the whole operation, because clearly we don't have anybody in the state that can grow the right kind of quality that we need to have. And I get it, it's new, but there are growers, but maybe you can't find one that wants to work at an MSO. But you consult with people that know how to do these things the right way, and they're just not doing it the right way. And it's sad, is what I think. It's sad because they could have a quality product and they just refuse to do it because it's about money, is what it comes down to. And I said it the other day, the top biggest three companies, just about Aurora, Tilray, and Curaleaf, they haven't made a profit in 5 years. Like, that's
Right.
pretty, and you see there's lines around the block. People assume these companies make billions of dollars every year, and they just don't, because the overhead is just so much to grow quality product. And that's what people are starting to realize.
Well, at least we find that there is an independence opening. There's Valley Wellness that I went to recently. They're in Raritan. They're like Harmony, not connected to anybody, and their selection was pretty interesting. The product was good. Harmony will be moving into Jersey City and Hoboken. So it's not all MSO controlled like everyone thinks, but at the same time, the social equity licenses haven't gone anywhere. I mean, people have no access to cash. And if you don't have access to cash, what are you supposed to do with your license?
You literally just can't even get one. And that's what the big thing right now is. I mean, you have to try to find 100 investors to try to get the capital to be able to do something like this, because, and I get it as an investor too. I don't want to foot the bill for a whole thing because it's scary. You have no idea what's going to happen. No one knows the regulations, the laws, the banking laws, you can't transport anything. It's just so much craziness and gray areas that as an investor, you have to kind of look at it as a business, and you want to be smart about your money. And yeah, everybody wants to jump into the business. I have a cannabis company, so I know, and I look at all the stocks. I can tell you what the companies are doing. And it's just one of them businesses and industries that's new. Yes, there's a lot of money involved, and some people will make money, but they have to be very, very smart with the way they run their businesses.
And patient.
Patience.
Because the money is not coming in overnight.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, private equity does not really invest with social equity partners. It's just the reality. So to get the 10 million that you pretty much need to open up your doors, it's very tough. And then the big guys swoop in, buy those licenses for 20 cents on the dollar, and we've defeated the whole purpose of legalization. But Jimmy, to you, there is some good weed here. It's not. I mean, I know you're not supposed to gauge things by THC levels, but there are a certain number of the stores that are routinely delivering over 30% THC products for flower, which certainly better than what we're used to getting. But there's a long way to go, and I think Doug is right. Once the people who really know what they're doing get a chance to show they know what they're doing, we're going to have a renaissance here.
Yeah, wouldn't it make sense for the big growers, the MSOs that have the hundreds of thousands of square feet, to create, 10, 20,000 square foot and have a different grower in each one? Now, obviously, is that cost effective? That's what it comes down to. We all know it's money. And also with energy, Sam, Cara Crab Burnham taught me something, and I want to share it with you guys, because this is why I love talking to people all the time, because you never know who's going to enlighten you about something about this plant, because it's so deep. A 20,000 square foot canopy is the limit that she will buy in stores here in Massachusetts. So she says anybody who has a grow facility over that isn't creating the best cannabis, or as the quality that she'd like. Sam, is 20,000 square foot? I mean, Uncle Pete in Maine has 1,000 square feet, and he puts out great quality product.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a magic number in terms of the square footage of canopy. But to the point that we were talking earlier, is that some of the big MSOs just can't produce good product. I think the real reason is that they're just the scale is just too big. You can't possibly control to the extent that you need to the conditions in a massive facility. that is multiple tens of thousands of square feet. I think the true ability to to get the properties you want out of the plant can only be done at a small scale. The MSOs probably know that, hey, they can put their name on anything. People will walk around the corner, stand on the corner, to get to it. But yeah, it's funny. The bigger guys, they also seem to be kind of missing the mark on lots of different size of things. On the energy and sustainability piece, for example, you would think that the big guys would be all over this, right? I mean, they're going to have to be reporting to the SEC in a few years, possibly. Their environmental footprint on carbon emissions. Are they anywhere near thinking about to do this? Not really. The smaller guys are curious about it, and they're the ones who are the first at the table. But the big guys seem to be kind of missing these opportunities, which is always kind of jarring to me.
Yeah, we're having a little audio problem with you, Sam, but we're hearing you for the most part. I want to go back to Stu and talk to him about the role of the MSO in this new industry. Obviously, you heard everybody's, they crappy weed. No, you don't even get high off the crap. But it's an important play because they have the capital built in to fund the lobbyist efforts in Washington, D.C. and keeping that momentum going. Because if you didn't have the MSOs, the market would be all over the place. It might have better weed, but it wouldn't. The reform movement may end. What's your opinion about the role of the MSO in a infant industry like cannabis?
Well, let's look at New York State. First of all, the MSOs are not allowed to sell their product to the social equity applicants. So they're only allowed to sell to the medical dispensaries that carry, because it's vertical integration. However, when and I've been to the Curaleaf facility in New York, I've been to PharmaCann. You're talking hundreds of thousands of square feet of all kinds of things going on there. It's kind of amazing when you think, because they're in the middle of nowhere and then you see this giant facility. However, because the social equity law in New York was supposed to make it an even playing field, and that's why the MSOs are being kept out right now. So they are not allowed to supply the small independents who are getting their licenses, which presents a problem because last year, the state allowed conditional growing licenses to hemp growers, but it was only one season and they were only allowed 1 acre in which to grow. Now, Sam can speak to this. I got to know about your expertise, but 1 season does not breed good weed. That rhymes. How about that? But it doesn't. And so New York State is going to be selling inferior product legally, probably for the next year and a half, which is only going to keep the legacy industry alive. Right. New Jersey does not have that restriction. In fact, if you get a license, you can get, weed from any legitimate grower. Because, and that's also one reason why all the dispensaries carry the other one's products. And what I always find interesting is the home store. Let's say I go to Rise, which is owned by GTI, and they're going to be carrying different product from Ascend, who's another MSO here. If I went to the Ascend store, they wouldn't have the same thing that Rise does. So you talk about consumer confusion, and it just constantly clouds it up. I do agree with Doug about the place in Cranberry. I've not been to Bridgewater. I've heard only great things about it. It's quite a schlep. I live in Montclair. But I said I went to Valley Wellness, which is independently owned in Raritan. Very impressed what they had. It gave me optimism for what the other independent growers are going to be able to put in the marketplace. And we're going to have, New Jersey's going to have a good 3-year start over New York. And we should just take full advantage of it. The way Massachusetts took so long, Jimmy, it was 4 years. In New Jersey, we have 3. The law passed 3-1, and yet only 150 out of 550 municipalities have agreed to allow legal cannabis to be sold there.
Right. Yeah, the NIMBY part of this is bothersome in so many ways as well. But I totally understand human behavior. Okay. And human behavior likes to bitch and moan rather than praise. Is that accurate? You guys agree, right? It's easier to complain. Doug, don't I do enough complaining, right? All right.
We all do.
Hey, Stu, what do you
Yes, sir.
what's the next thing? First of all, the legal market now is helping the legacy market survive, especially in the beginning, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is exactly the opposite of why a lot of people thought we should legalize this so we could clean it up, test it, and control it and tax it. And what happened again? Humans get involved. They're greedy. You know, let's put about 50 layers of compliance and regulations in. The future of this industry, you know, a lot of people are saying doom and gloom. It's a race to the bottom. What's your assessment of that?
Well, first of all, I think it's the politicians that make it so convoluted. If it was just left to us, we'd have this done already. We'd be, you know, a lot more places be open. It'd be better product in the marketplace and more diverse product in the marketplace. New Jersey does not allow beverages, nor does it allow edibles besides lozenges, because what about the kids? However, what about all the people with respiratory conditions who can't smoke? And beverages and edibles are perfect solutions to that. If you're thinking about the medical patient first, they're not thinking about the medical person. They're thinking about politics.
And the lozenges are so bad. You literally have to eat Tic Tacs with
You
them.
gotta eat the whole bag. You have to eat the whole bag.
That too, but the taste of them makes you gag. So just think you're a medical patient and you're like, no, you have cancer or another ailment, and you're trying to eat these things to be better, and you're literally gagging because they are that bad. I mean, they are garbage. And like you said, you literally have to take the whole bag just to feel anything from it. It's just crazy.
And that just keeps the legacy market thriving.
Absolutely.
Those kind of prohibitions really do. And when that happens, is you actually endanger the kids and all the people that they're worried about more so than through the adult use program, because you have controls and you have ways to make sure the proper people get it. But that's, you know, pretty much in a nutshell what the problem is here.
Right. And the kids over the age of 13 know more about it than the adults do in their households for the most part. It's just the nature of this plant. Sam, what's ahead for energy and what you're up to? What's your next project you're involved with?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me okay? Am I coming through? Okay,
yeah,
great.
it's what we call hollow, but I think we can hear it. We're okay. Go ahead.
I'm trying out a new system, so
it failed.
Thank you for indulging me. But yeah, the thing I'm working on, especially thinking about New Jersey, is that the New Jersey Clean Energy Program, which is the statewide kind of energy efficiency program for any business in New Jersey, looks really good for growers right now. They're putting a lot of money into the program to help businesses of all types install more energy efficient equipment and get paid to do that. So I would definitely certainly encourage any of the listeners right now in New Jersey or in many states across the country that have these programs to not overlook this opportunity, because I've got some clients who I work with who are getting $250,000 checks for work that actually does help them save energy and save money over the course of their operating their life. So it's definitely worth doing. Jersey guys have got a great program. So there's one thing there.
Yeah.
The second is good.
I was going to say, you're doing good by doing right by these people too, because you're saving them money and you're also making their whole operation more efficient, correct?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And where I come in too, I also take all the time off their plates. So they don't have to worry about dealing with this stuff, right? So I can come in and I know their programs and I know how to make them work for folks. And basically with very little effort on their part. So it's great. It's definitely, it's a win-win-win. You can, I can think 3 or 4 more wins in there altogether. And so it's a great little operation that we run.
Sam, how do people get to you at your energy efficiency group?
Yeah, so Climate Resources Group is the name of the company, and we provide our services through the Enlighten Your Grow program. But folks can find me at sam@climateresourcesgroup.com. And yeah, I'm happy to speak with folks anytime. And Jimmy, people know how to get a hold of you, so you know my number too. So it's good.
Google and LinkedIn. You'll be able
right.
to find Sam, right?
That's right, absolutely. And one other thing, folks should definitely, if they're not already using a competitive supplier for their power, do it now, because energy prices are going through this weird thing right now. Actually, they're going down right now a little bit on the wholesale level. So make sure, if you are using a power supplier, shop around right now.
There you go. Shop. I got you. I heard shop around too. Okay, Stu, how do people find Bridge Strategic? Because you're like at every event in New York.
Well, to your point, I am very active on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. It's Stu, S-T-U, at bridgestrategic.com. To your point, bridge part of it is in reference to the Zachem Bridge in Boston. And also PR builds bridges between communities, just the same way my brother built bridges between real communities. And my website is bridgestrategic.com, but you can just look at Stu at you name it, and I'm there's not too many Stews in the cannabis space. So.
Hey, Stu, do you remember that night at the Summit Lounge about a couple of years ago with us?
Yes, I do. Well, we consumed quite a lot of CryoCure content, if I believe that was the night.
We do remember that, which is the most important thing and the most amazing thing too, I might add. Wednesday night, January 25th, live from the Summit, a special edition of whatever I'm going to call it. It's probably going to be In the Weeds. It's a talk show with me. I'm bringing in Eric Martin, the former Patriots guy that played for the Pats back in 2014. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He brings it up. He's very pro-cannabis, and he's also the first NFL player that I talked to in an interview who admitted playing under the influence of cannabis. And that, to me, means he is in my book of life forever, just because he's so open and transparent about his own use. He'll be there. Elena Pinto, the anchor of the We Talk News show that you see every week, following this one on our Pro Cannabis Media social media network and all of the Pro Cannabis Media outlets out there. So, Stu Zachem, always a pleasure seeing you and reminiscing.
Thank you, Jimmy. Yes, sir.
Sam, whatever system you're using, you're going to need a new one. Okay. I love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on, Sam. I know you made a special effort, so I appreciate that. We're going to have our final half hour. Don't go away. We've got two great guests coming up, and I'm not even going to tell you who they are. Don't go away.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com. Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
Which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission and the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
All right, welcome back. The big finish of Green Rush Live, another Friday afternoon, really live cannabis business talk show that we carry on our social media network and, of course, our Roku channel and our Apple channel, PCM TV. Joining me, two new people, as well as Doug Miller. He continues to hang in here with us, and I cannot understand why. No, Doug is with us. An old friend is with us, Maggie Kinsella. She's with Coyote Cannabis, and Maggie is part of the first day I went to a cannabis trade show, March 18th, 2018, when you were at the booth at MassCan, because you were the press secretary for many years. So you're always going to be part of this book that if I ever get a chance to write, you'll be in there with a big smile. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy.
And thank you for joining us. Also joining us is the vice president of Scientific Cell Company. His name is Evan Friedman from New York. Evan, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, it's great. And I know I'm going to thank Richie Guerra from Sensi Magazine, who introduced us. And I believe we actually met or talked yesterday, and here you are today. So I do appreciate it. A lot of people like to know months in advance. And I'm like, I can't plan anything for the next 24 hours, let alone months in advance. Okay?
No, we're on the same wavelength there. You needed somebody here, and I'm here. Happy to do it.
No disrespect to Maggie, because she could have been great, okay? But I like the quadrant. I like having two guest hosts, or two hosts, me and Doug, and then two guests. So thank you both for coming on. Maggie, first of all, tell us what is the status of Coyote Cannabis right now? What are you up to?
So we are provisionally licensed in Uxbridge for the second time, but we're further along. So I'm very excited about that. We've put orders in, we've got our building permit, all of our stuff to upload to the CCC for ARC review and energy compliance. And then hopefully we'll be building out really soon here and operating in 2023. So.
Fantastic. That's great. And we all know the journey is a challenge, no matter what you're going after in this business, between all those regulations that you just have to have before you even get your application going, right? You have to have your host, if you're doing a dispensary license, you have to have your host community agreement. And then I found out from my friend, Stephen Werther down at ACS, he's a medical dispensary and he has to go through the exact same thing for his adult use license that was finally voted in by his town last Saturday. So, I mean, it's a never-ending challenge and battle. Evan, tell us about how you handle that with your Scientific Cell Company. Tell me what you're up to and what your company's all about.
So we've been in business for 60 years now, selling measurement technology for people with chemistry. So research, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, food and beverage. Well, guess what has a lot of chemistry in it? Yes. My favorite thing. So like when the opportunity to kind of mix my worlds together presented itself, I jumped in head first. Yeah. So we sell measurement tech for growers to do instant potency reading and we have other tech for on-site microbe testing, like hops latent viroid and stuff like that, trying to give more power to the cultivator, be it a home grower or a craft cultivator, or even the big MSOs, right? You've been talking about quality. Part of quality is like monitoring for pests and pathogens. When you're growing 1,000,000 square feet, Jesus, 1,000,000 square feet, some of these people have. Not in Massachusetts necessarily, or New York.
There's a few, Maggie, right? There's at least one, isn't there?
1,000,000 square feet?
I thought there was one in I know they tried to get it into North Andover or Andover, and that got, nixed. But do you know what the biggest grow facility is in Massachusetts? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Well, I believe, I'm getting nervous now. I believe tier 11 is 100,000 square feet is the max. I don't think we can go over that.
Interesting.
Sure, but you look in California, you've got like Glass House has plans to build 1,000,000 square foot facility, I think, this year. Which, like, how does that even make sense when the price of cannabis, especially on the West Coast, is at the bottom of the market?
Yeah. Hey, did you expect this, Maggie? Did you expect a market correction 4 years into the Massachusetts experiment here?
I don't really know what I expected, because I certainly had expectations when the law was passed, and not many of those came true to a certain extent. Some things I was, I guess I maybe got right, but hindsight's 2020, right? So I did have an expectation that at some point in the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, that we would hit that, just because that's a trend that we saw happen on the West Coast, and it takes some time, but there are things that come across here after the fact, and price corrections and those profit margins were definitely going to eventually even out, especially as more states legalize. It's going to be, the big guys and then the craft. So we'll see. But yeah, I didn't really have a timeline on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's agriculture, right? It's a commodity. It's always going to end up there eventually.
Will it eventually be traded on the futures market, Evan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know when, maybe it's 50 years from now, but at some point, this is the most useful plant that known to man, right? Like the number's stupid, 10,000 uses, 50,000 uses, whatever it is. It's more uses than any other plant. I heard the other best used plant is coconut, and there's like 50 uses, maybe something like that. It's crazy.
No, it's actually it's why God put it on this earth. It really, I mean, if you think about that and get away from the last 100 years of prohibition, and just think about the fact that it was a medicinal product at the turn of the 20th century. So we're talking about 1900 to 1910, when medical doctors who went to the best medical schools that were around at that time, okay, and Harvard was, Yale was, NYU Med was too, okay, they wrote 5 million prescriptions for medicinal cannabis. 5 million between 1900 and 1910. Then what happened? Mr. DuPont got involved. He saw that hemp could impact his pulp business, and he started spending money on vilifying and prohibiting cannabis, and that's how this whole thing started. Doug, I want to get you back into this conversation, because I know I actually think you're a lot smarter than I am. So I'd like you to ask a couple of quick. Take on Maggie and Evan and ask a few questions and get back in here. Go ahead.
All right. So Evan, I'm interested because I love chemistry as well, and I like to do my extractions. And so you were saying that you got to mix both companies, businesses, like both your hobbies, basically. And so how long have you been into the cannabis space, and how long have you been in the measurement space?
So I personally have been in the measurement space for about 14 years now. So I guess it was 2009. I got out of school. I wanted to be do lights for rock concerts, and but this I came to New York at the height of the Great Recession, and there were 0 jobs. And so I got into the family business and measuring stuff with light, and so it was pointed in a different spot, but and it's maybe it was 2019 that we started looking at applications in the cannabis space. I think the Farm Bill came and there was some more comfort there, and there was just so much stuff happening. There was a lot of energy, a lot of money coming into the industry, and there was chemistry to be measured, and so we wanted to go after that. So it's been interesting. And every 6 months it's different.
Are you in the area where you're actually discovering new cannabinoids in this plant, or is that not what you're testing for?
So, I mean, those are the kinds of people that I am working with, that I'm forming relationships with. So I work with an organization called AOAC, and they set performance requirements for testing methods. And so it's like all the best lab scientists are talking about what the best ways to test aspects of cannabis are there. Or the American Chemical Society, where different groups of chemists are talking about discovering things. So it was really interesting. The last time I went to an American Chemical Society meeting, there was somebody there from Abstracts talking about their discovery of the compounds that really are associated with skunkiness. And that they're most similar to compounds found in like garlic. And it's like, it's not terpenes, it's not flavonoids, they're volatile sulfur compounds, and like that's what makes weed skunky. And it's just so interesting what is still being discovered.
Yeah. Maggie, I know you're fascinated by this industry because you've been in it for so long now, right?
Yeah, it's been since 2014 I entered the legal space.
Oh wow.
And
you're still around. I'm
yeah,
impressed
the end of
already.
well, technically the end of 2014. Then the beginning of 2015 is when I had joined MassCan, and then when NIC was a weed school, so Nick and I wanted to get into the industry, and we couldn't put legacy market on our resume. So we did that, and then kind of immediately after graduating, we both ended up in the industry, him at a facility, me in a doctor's office, and then I ended up going to the same facility as him in a management position. And yeah, it's been a ride. I didn't actually enter back into like the industry as far as like the cultivation and the operation side of things until Blake and I had a chat, and he tried our product and was like, this is it. And I was like, fantastic. And so it went from there. But I'm really curious about the compounds that you brought up, where it's not the terpenes that are associated with the garlic flavor or scent, because I know with cannabis, like, and I'm kind of like that with cannabinoids and terpenes, like the cannabinoids are secondary for me to terpenes because they actually influence the type of psychoactive effects that the THC is going to have. And so I'm really enamored by the further breakdown of these chemical compounds and what is responsible for what, because I feel like they all kind of work together synchronistically. We don't like, taking it apart as much as we can. We want to keep it together so that you get that full benefit from what the plant makes. So yeah, it's been a trip. I've learned so much, as frustrating as some of this stuff has been. I will forever be grateful for the experience that it gave me and the things that I learned. I learned a lot about people and business and the plant itself. And so I'll carry that with me forever. And, hopefully that makes me better in the future entering the industry.
I suspect you've learned something about perseverance as well.
Got a lot of that.
the industry mantra is survive to thrive, you know, because we have to go through this period of time of adjustment, a market adjustment, which is going on right now. Okay, we're going to play a little game. I've done this before. If you were the cannabis czar, both of your home state and or federal, what would be the one thing you'd want to change? Doug Miller, you get to go first about this. What's the one thing you change in your state? And what's the one thing, obviously, you change at the federal level?
I would change the testing process because, like I said earlier, you can have the same product, send it to 3 different labs. You're getting 3 different results. It drives you crazy. You know that we have the science and the knowledge to really get it right. And I think it's very important because we use cannabis for medicinal reasons. So you want to be able to make take the best quality product and make the best quality product for medicinal purposes to help people. And without the proper testing, it's very hard to do it because and people, when you grow cannabis, the cannabis plant absorbs almost everything in the soil. So you get a lot of heavy metals. As a matter of fact, I've mentioned it on a different show, but on here in California and other wineries, they actually use hemp and they'll run a season with hemp just to extract all the metals out of the soil, and then they go back to planting their grapes. And it's and like you said, there's a million amazing uses for hemp. It's just crazy. You could just keep going on and on and on, even things that you never thought about, just like something like that.
That soil remediation one's great, big time in Central America right now, because they've farmed these lands, tobacco. We destroy the earth with the farming practices, and like the worst fields, I was told 3 seasons with hemp.
Yeah, that's what they say about three years of planting the hemp plant, and then they go back to their grapes. And I've actually been to a winery where they were actually doing it in Oregon, and it was amazing. Like a third of the farm, they just started growing hemp, and they said it was a 3-year thing. Then they were just going to transfer the next third of it and then do the last third. That way they had 2/3 of the farm or the operation still running so they can generate their revenue. And they were like, but the most important thing is to make the soil perfect, because without that, 10 years down the road, we may not be able to stay open. So if we do it now, we can think about the future. But if we don't think about that, we may not have a future. And it's amazing that hemp plant can do something like that. Yeah. So that's why I say testing.
All right. That's I'm going to say the federal level or the state level?
Both levels, honestly. Both because when you go, because to do it state by state, it would just be insane. You have to have oversight federally, as we spoke earlier, just to be able to transport things. If you have one way to test things in California and a totally different regulation in Massachusetts, you'll never be able to send the product across, so that the industry wouldn't be able to survive without a federal testing. And again, I think it's the quality and it's important.
Absolutely. All right. That you passed. Okay. Just so you know, Maggie, you're last. Okay, Evan, you go. So federally, I know you have the answers. Go ahead.
So let me jump on what Doug's got for us. So testing, yes, but I say, here's my hot take. We should eliminate most of the testing. The medical product should absolutely be tested to the nines, all of it. And the cannabis, regardless of cannabinoid content, should be treated like an agricultural product. We should buy it in the grocery store with the rest of our produce. If it has mold on it, don't buy that. Just like the container of strawberries, when you look at it, if it has mold in it, don't buy it. And treat this plant like the same fresh produce that we like. So
okay, so you're the czar. what you change besides more testing? We get that.
I'm less testing.
Less testing. Oh, sorry, my bad. Less testing.
No, test the medicinal stuff. Like let the states or the federal government set a medicinal regime, and everything else is peaches.
Okay, and if you could change one thing in your state, besides more access to better quality cannabis, what would that be? What would
They
you like
should-
to see?
They should give anybody that they find selling weed, they should give a license to and force them to comply with the system.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. All right, Maggie, what would you do if you could change something in Massachusetts? Start there.
It's so difficult to pick one thing
I
because
know, that's what I mean.
if I had a magic wand, I think since there's stuff that's already in the works, I would love to see home grow and farmers market integration so that you can have small batch individuals enter the market legally and participate without having to go through all of the fun things that the state makes you go through with a facility and whatnot.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. And Maine does
Yes,
it.
it
I
is.
know Maine has farmers markets for weed.
Yeah. And it really is like as simple as setting up a 21 plus area at a farmer's market and letting people get your product tested and participate. You know, if people, you could probably, you know, enter into the towns, because I know some of them are more difficult. You know, they're not going to just let you sell 100 pounds. Like, so, you know, we could start somewhere reasonable for what a home grower could produce. And, you know, if I had a magic wand, like, let people do what they're doing and call it a day. But I don't. So I would expect us in a reasonable fashion to be able to communicate and get something like that passed, that we would have to work with the towns on what their limits would be. But I would like to see home grow participation with product and go that way. Federal, deschedule it and F off for the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want, like, I'm going to reiterate something Kara said earlier, which I was like, yes, girl, get the federal government out of everything.
Yeah. Good luck to good luck. That happened in 1776, you know.
Well, you know, they've amassed quite a bit of power since then, and it's visibly a disaster. So I don't have faith in, you know, and it really pains me to say it, because I know that there's a lot of things that we've passed and things that we want to be excited about. And it looks really pretty on paper, and it's really enticing, those words that come out of their mouths, but the implementation of it, I don't have faith in. You know, call me jaded, but like, it's lacking. So I really would just love to see them deschedule it and just
just wash their hands of it.
Right.
Yeah,
And if you do deschedule it, that automatically opens up the banks and gets rid of 280E.
everything.
Yeah,
It's
everything.
it's like so I'm just like, what is all of this BS? Like, just so that's my
Money.
Right?
All
course it
money.
is.
They're
Right?
making
It's
cuckoo
just-
bucks off 280E taxes, so
Yeah, right. They're making more off a 280E than like what they'd make off of normal income taxes.
yep,
Which is just silly, because it's
silly.
hampering the growth of all of these businesses.
every single one. Yep, no, totally agree.
Well, I'm really glad we fixed all the problems in the cannabis industry over the last 15 minutes.
And it was so simple. It only took us 10 minutes.
Maggie, if people want to check out what you're up to these days, how do they find you?
Me personally, I'm just, you know, laying low, but Coyote Cannabis is coyotecannabisco.com. If you want to subscribe, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Coyote Canna, and just see what we're up to and ready for opening.
Yeah. And by the way, you know what? I won't even, I'll save it to after the show, because I don't want to say something that it might get me in trouble. Anyway, Evan, how do people find you?
Oh, you can check me out monthly on my podcast, Noid Knowledge, and you find me on Instagram, weed_wavelengths.
There you go. And Doug, I want a stock tip. Where do I go?
DougieFreshPicks.com.
There you go. Dougie's Fresh Picks. Who do you got in the football games this week? No, I'm only kidding. You don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. I don't want to date the show anyway. Hey, Doug, thank you again for being a great guest host. You're starting to relax even more on camera. This is what I like to see. And it was fun. Maggie, a pleasure to see you. Evan, I'd love to chit chat with you some other time offline, as they like, because I think I'd enjoy it. And Maggie, I know how to find you. All right. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, thank you so much for watching another edition of Green Rush Live. Remember, that We Talk News follows this live stream. And again, I'm so proud of that show with all the correspondents that we have calling in the reports from all over the world now. It's really gone to a place that I never thought we'd see. But if you really want to find out what's going on in Europe, Canada, Missouri, Oregon, Washington State, New Jersey, what am I missing? I'm missing Vermont and Massachusetts, of course. Stay tuned for that. For everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Coming up on We Talk News this week, will the U.S. House's new majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, end federal reform progress in D.C.? Plus, weeks of torrential rain in California wreaking havoc on the cannabis crop. And Prince Harry comes out of the cannabis closet in his new tell-all book. And the release of Brittany Griner gets condemned by a Louisiana Republican Senate committee. And Connecticut opens adult use sales in the nutmeg state. Will a nutmeg OG strain be far behind? All that and more on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto, and welcome to this week's Weed Talk News. There's a new sheriff in town on the House floor, and his name is Kevin McCarthy. With Republicans now leading the House, advocates in the cannabis industry are skeptical that federal reform will make any significant progress, at least in the next 2 years. The House Speaker vote alone may have been a signal of the chaos that's to come in Congress. And Rezwan Khan, president of the Global Alliance for Cannabis Commerce and DNA Genetics, says, quote, "This is also impacting even our ability to reach out and schedule meetings with staff of representatives or try to get their gauge on some of these things." Not a hopeful omen for the start of the 118th Congress when it comes to cannabis. But on a brighter note, from the feds, the Federal U.S. Sentencing Commission met this week, voting to propose an amendment to update sentencing guidelines on cannabis convictions. Marijuana Moment reports the proposal would revive those guidelines, essentially suggesting that past convictions of simple cannabis possession without intent to sell or distribute warrants a judge to be able to impose a sentence that's lower than the minimum recommended. It's a big reflection of more states moving to legalize cannabis, meaning people should no longer be locked up for it. The Sentencing Commission is now seeking public feedback on the proposal, even specifically asking whether there is an alternative approach it should consider for addressing sentences for possession of marijuana. Vote Pro podcast Phil Adams has the details on a recent study that could prove exactly why this is needed.
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC report. While the number of cannabis arrests are down dramatically in recent years, federal sentences for those with prior cannabis convictions are getting longer. Under the sentencing guidelines promulgated by the U.S. Sentencing Commission, in the last fiscal year, hundreds of federal offenders received enhanced prison sentences because of their prior state-level convictions for cannabis possession, according to the USSC's own study. More than half of them were from states that have since legalized or decriminalized cannabis to some degree, and about 10% of them had no other criminal history. The USSC announced last October that it was looking into amending their sentencing guidelines. Their report this week provides statistical support for why such changes are needed. People who live in legal states may be less likely to suffer from alcohol abuse. According to a study funded by the National Institutes of Health and published in the journal Psychological Medicine, researchers found a lower rate of alcohol use disorder in states where recreational cannabis is legal compared to states where it remains illegal. While the study found no significant differences in overall alcohol consumption, those living in legal states were, quote, less likely to risk harm while under the influence of alcohol. The study looked at 240 pairs of twins, where one lived in a legal state and the other did not. On average, the twin living in the state where recreational use is legal consumed cannabis more often and had fewer AUD symptoms than their counterpart in the non-recreational state. The authors caution that the data do not imply that using cannabis is without its risks and that it, quote, merits additional investigation. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Doors are now open in Connecticut for adult use sales. Only 13 companies were licensed to take part in day one sales, mostly multi-state operators, so hopefully more local businesses will get in on the action soon, as sales are expected to hit $300 million in the first year alone. And speaking of all that money from weed sales, where does all the revenue from those taxes go? Well, that depends on which state you live in. And in the Garden State, cannabis regulators want the public to weigh in on where the green should go. Jill Goldsberry has the details in the New Jersey report.
Hey everyone, welcome to Weed Talk News New Jersey. I'm Jill Goldsberry, and here's what's going on in cannabis this week. If you're a resident of New Jersey who's wanted to chime in on where the tax dollars go, now you finally have a chance. There is, and here's how. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission is looking for feedback from New Jersey residents this month. And this is going to be via their regional feedback sessions, January 13th and January 18th. January 13th is a new date that I just got a tip on, so please check that out. Many residents voiced concerns during the last feedback sessions in November 2022. According to NewJersey.com, residents were really concerned about the lack of transparency from the legislature and the governor's office on where the current tax dollars are being spent and where they're going. So the state has actually begun funding a program called the Technical Assistance Program, which is focused mainly on assistance, training, and mentorship. And this is according to Charles Barker of the Cannabis Commission. And I reported on proposed programs a few months ago. You may be able to find that on the channel still. However, the state is really aimed at transitioning legacy market entrepreneurs into the legal market. And this is according to Jeff Brown, the CRC's executive director. So don't forget to chime in with your feedback on January 13th or January 18th at 7 p.m. You could find out more about these sessions via the website, newjersey.gov/cannabis/about meetings. And I've got another little tidbit for you. If you're in the market for edibles, and this is specifically for my edible lovers, you will love this. If you're looking for something new, something different, King Cannabis just launched a premier line of artisan confections in New York City this past week. If you're looking for something cool for Valentine's Day, they've launched, like I said, a new line of artisan confections, chef owned and operated. Shout out to Chef Jason. This happened recently at Work and Roll right here in New York City, hosted in conjunction with High Garden NYC. Shout out to High Garden NYC and Work and Roll. King Cannabis is like I said, a premier chef owned cannabis company. You can find small batches of everything. That's how they produce their products. They're very specific about clean ingredients as well. What we found that was chocolate and delicious were chocolate confections that were dosed out at about 50 milligrams. So you could find milk chocolate and dark chocolate. And if that's too much for you, we also found a selection of gummies as well. And they range from anywhere from 2 to 50 milligrams. So there literally is something for everyone. If you want to find out where they're sold at now in our area, go to kingcannabisroc.com and check them out for more information. That's all for Weed Talk News New Jersey. I'm Jill Goldsberry. Thanks for watching.
Prince Harry's tell-all memoir, Spare, hit bookshelves this week. And among the chaotic details of his brotherly beef that have come to light, the Duke of Sussex has also revealed his experiences with intoxicating substances, specifically trying cocaine and cannabis as a teen, and even tripping on mushrooms later in his adult life. Some speculate he should have been denied a US visa for openly admitting to those experiences. But could the UK be turning a new leaf when it comes to drug offenses? Our European correspondent, Lex Pelger, reports.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. In the UK, the police are changing their tactics. Thanks to a decision by the National Police Chiefs Council, now when someone is caught with cannabis or cocaine for the first time, they will not be prosecuted. Instead, they will be offered education or treatment programs. The offender would then have no criminal record as long as they finish their program. This approach is already in place in 14 of the 43 police districts, but now it is officially being applied nationwide. This public health approach from the police is at odds with the government's current white paper, which favors a 3 strikes and you're out approach called swift, certain, tough. In Italy, to supply the 1,500 kilograms of cannabis required each year for their medical cannabis program, they have called in the army. In an anonymous-looking military facility on the edge of Florence, the Defense Ministry is growing cannabis using ultra-clean rooms and a secret mix of nutrients to create a highly standardized medical product. With about 600 plants and 6 harvests a year, the operation produced 300 kilograms in 2022, and they plan to ramp up production. This collaboration makes sense because the Italian military has a history of producing orphan drugs for rare disorders and has the capabilities to protect this grow operation. In Ireland, after the European Commission decided against sanctioning the country for its prosecution of the hemp and CBD industry, Irish police are set to resume prosecutions against businesses and individuals. For instance, a consumer charged for purchasing CBD products is due to appear in court later this month. According to Chris Allen, the executive director of Hemp Federation of Ireland, based on this high court ruling, Irish authorities have decided to resume the criminal prosecution of Irish citizens, and in 10 days' time, a spectacle of criminal trials will begin in the lower courts. These include the prosecution of Irish citizens accused of buying and possessing EU consumer goods, which are widely available in shops throughout Ireland and Europe. Overall, this continues Ireland's record as one of the most prohibitionistic countries in all the EU. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Cannabis has been legal in Canada for several years now, but are consumers finally getting tired of the prices they're paying? Our Canadian correspondent, Debbie Facey, has that story, plus the plans for a British Columbia dispensary that are going up in smoke.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey, your Canadian correspondent, with your toke of the week. This week in Canada, what we have is the amazing, but sad to say, plans for the Virginia Airport and BC co-pilot Cannabis is no longer going to be having a non-medicinal or non-medical cannabis retail store in their airport. The plans for them colliding and coming together to create a retail store in the Virginia airport is no longer going to be in effect due to some licensing and some regulations disagreements and agreements not necessarily being able to go past. But they did have all of the regulations in place to be approved, but sad to say, due to the fact that it is a BC company going over to the States, even though they were not going to be using their actual name, they were not able to come to an agreement. Next, what we have in Canada is one of the biggest topics that have been being spoken about was the tobacco smoking laws. And it was all about converting people that had smoking tobacco, such as cigarettes, and seeing the conversion rate when it came to vaping. From 2018, when we started our new tobacco and smoking regulations and laws, we haven't seen a change whatsoever, especially when it came to cannabis being regulated and cannabis cartridges being created, it has enhanced, but it is basically, I almost want to say, evened out the scale when it came to smokers that actually smoked cigarettes and people that actually had vaped. Last but not least is the amazing and sad to say topic that we all probably discuss throughout the world when it comes to cannabis is the cost. Cannabis in Canada has been rising, and we have been having a weird influx when it comes to the margins due to the LPs being able to, not to say, but being able to create their own pricing. When it comes to many of the small mom and pop shops, there are many that are not able to not only carry the brands, but they're not able to also enhance the customer's experience. That has become a problem. With that being said as well, it is also diving into many people's pockets when it comes to medical patients and non-medical patients, due to the fact that it is becoming something that is pricey. With stores being able to create their own pricing when it comes to their cannabis and not necessarily having to abide by a certain price margin at this point in time, it has and will be still creating that havocness when it comes to being able to afford our medicine. This is Debbie Facey from We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent with this week's toke.
Back in the US, the South could be rising or at least getting higher. This week, Representative Bob Freeman of Nashville introduced the Free All Cannabis for Tennesseans Act. The bill would task the Department of Agriculture with creating and handling a structure for cultivating, processing, and the sale of cannabis, which would be big news for any state in that region. We'll keep our eyes on its progress. And hopes are high for legal cannabis in Hawaii, too. With a newly elected governor at the helm, lawmakers say they are ready to talk reform, even preparing a task force to finalize their plans and recommendations. Advocates on the Big Island say they expect an active legislation session with hopes that legalize the plant and clear records. Traveling over to the mainland, the negative impact of no banking protections may be rearing its ugly head as a financial institution goes dark on its customers. Marianne Kersagi has that story and more in our Oregon report.
I'm Marianne from Alibi Cannabis with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. More news about dispensaries owing large sums to their suppliers this week. Willamette Week is reporting that edibles company Drops is suing La Moda for almost $400,000 in past due bills. La Moda has over 20 dispensaries across the state. Also, Left Coast Financial Solutions has left customers high and dry. They were a local banking solutions provider. A number of customers report that they don't have access to their funds, and the company has not responded to requests from reporters. Finally, some hopeful news. According to Orca, average wholesale prices are up ever so slightly over last week. The price of indoor flower is mostly holding steady, while greenhouse has been trending slightly upwards. Hopefully, these trends indicate that the market has bottomed out and there's hope for improving prices. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for We Talk News.
Sticking with the Pacific Northwest, our new correspondent, Matt Friedlander, is the CEO of Skagit Organics. He reports from Washington State.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for We Talk News. This was a big week for cannabis news out of Washington State as we started our legislative session on January 9th. There is a lot on the docket, so let's get started. The first bill is concerning the employment of individuals who lawfully consume cannabis. This bill would make it illegal for any employer to discriminate against someone for their cannabis use off the job and away from the workplace. The second bill is considered a trigger bill concerning interstate commerce and allows the state to start forming a plan to create rules allowing Washington State cannabis businesses access to markets in other states once the federal government legalizes or deschedulizes cannabis. The third bill aims to expand and improve Washington's social equity cannabis program. Washington is still playing catch up on this issue, And this bill would give the LCB authority to issue new equity licenses based on population and census data. There is a lot of hope in the industry this year that some of these legacy problems from 2015 will finally be addressed. And we were happy to see the Cannabis Alliance, Washington's most influential cannabis trade group, was at the Capitol providing testimony, leading a coalition of cannabis trade groups in an effort to provide a unified message from the industry. Next week, we will update you on any new proposed cannabis legislation. But with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Matthew Friedlander with Skagit Organics, reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Despite the financial woes of the cannabis industry, there are still those that seem to thrive. For a look at the latest earnings from industry giant Tilray, here's Deborah Borchardt with the Green Market Report.
I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is the business update from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News. Earnings are just beginning to trickle out. Tilray Brands reported revenues fell 7% in the fiscal second quarter to $144 million. That's down from last year's $155 million, and it also dropped from the previous quarter. They also delivered a net loss of $67 million versus last year's net income of $5.7 million. Organigram Holdings had a better quarter. They reported net revenue of $43.3 million. That's up 43% from last year. They also beat analyst estimates, and Organigram posted a net income of $6.1 million versus a net loss of $1.3 million for the same time period last year. In state news, Maine's adult use cannabis sales almost doubled from 2021 to 2022. The state sold $159 million of cannabis last year, and that was up from $82 million in 2021. Recreational sales in Illinois also finished strong in 2022 with more than $1.5 billion in sales. That's up 13% from 2021, and total sales in December were the highest of any month at $143.9 million. And this has been your business update from the Green Market Report.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. When I'm not following this cannabis stocks, I'm scanning the market to find the next stock that's going to pop, as I did this week with Party City, stock ticker PRTY. I even mentioned it was about to have a party, and boom, 24 hours later, it ran 222% plus profit. So if you want to follow along, go to DougieFreshPicks.com. Now back to the cannabis stocks. A lot of these companies are trading under $1, so they're receiving letters from NASDAQ as they're not in compliance, and this could result in being delisted. They can file an extension, and they have about 180 days to get the stock to trade over $1. We have quite a few that are in jeopardy of becoming delisted. To name a few, we have Hexo, Leafly Holdings, Clever Leaf Holdings, Spring Big Holdings, which leads me to the fact that Aurora Cannabis, Tilray, and Curaleaf, three of the biggest companies in the industry, have not reported a profit in over 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. That's crazy. And Tilray, they just announced their second quarter cannabis revenue fell by 15%, but their projections are that the company is going to become profitable. It is such a crazy industry, so do your due diligence and trade smart. That's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
Mo Money in Massachusetts. Publication The Center Square reports that sales in the Bay State could eclipse $4 billion in the coming weeks. But as Weed Talk News producer Tori Chamberlain reports, the grass isn't always green when trying to make your way into that cash crop.
Hey guys, the numbers are in for Massachusetts, and as of December 18th, the state saw $1.42 billion in adult use cannabis sales for 2022. That is an insane amount of money to come from cannabis. And also, the State Cannabis Control Commission met today, so I'll be keeping an eye out to see whether anything substantial came out of that meeting, as they can sometimes be pretty lengthy. But with a mature market like we have here in Massachusetts, another example of the challenges of expanding from a medical license to an adult use license played out in the town of Bridgewater last weekend. A special vote was needed by residents there to approve the 2 medical dispensaries in that town before they apply for their adult use license. The 2 medical dispensaries, Theory Wellness and ACS, Alternative Compassion Services, had to educate the townspeople there. And that divisive vote led to some contentious conversations. Even though there were only 1,758 votes cast, the yes votes beat the no's by just 57. So now the process begins again for an application for that adult use license. More hard work ahead, something ACS CEO Steve Werther says is nothing new.
We've been working on our application to be prepared in the event that we did get the outcome we were looking for, and we'll submit our application just as soon as I get that. I need that to submit my application to the CCC. So I expect to hopefully have all of that done reasonably soon. And then honestly, there's no telling how long it's going to take, unfortunately, but I would have to guess probably no shorter than 6 months.
And I'll be back next week with any big news from the State Cannabis Control Commission's meeting. That's it for the Bay State Report. I'm Tori Chamberlain.
We are in the middle of winter, which is ski season. And what better place to spend a weekend on the slopes than in Vermont? Well, if you happen to be in the area, there are several fun and educational events happening. Jessie Lynn-Dolan has the details.
I'm Jessie Lynn-Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Now, 3 months into the adult use market here in Vermont, there are only 3 approved facilities for lab testing with almost 200 licensed cultivators. Vermont consumers continue to be excited about the rollout, slow as it may be. Vermontwana's first of 5 Ski Days series took place at Smuggler's Notch on January 29th. The second adventure is planned for January 27th at Bolton Valley Resort and is sponsored in part by Winooski Organic Retailers. To join the fun and network on the slopes, visit vermontawana.com. Graham Central, a Montpelier, Vermont retailer, in collaboration with vermonthelplaw.com, hosted a free expungement clinic on January 11th for those interested in learning about taking steps towards expunging eligible convictions from their criminal record. Every Friday, the Vermont Cannabis Nurses Associations offer a free hotline for Vermont patients, consumers, and employees. For more information and to sign up or sponsor, visit vermontcannabisnurse.com. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn-Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrols.com.
As more cannabis markets mature, it's always fun to see your favorite brands and companies get their flowers and accolades for their hard work. Michigan NORML Executive Director Rick Thompson has the details from a big industry awards show in Detroit.
Hello again, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Ever heard of the Weed Bar Awards? Well, that event is going down this Sunday in Detroit at the Detroit Music Hall. And the guest of honor will be Sherbinski's owner, Mario Guzman. Music acts like Afro Man and Willie J. Peso will be performing. Awards will be given out for Best Bud Tender, Best Retailer, and similar categories. Seems like this is an event that's really focused on the Detroit market, not elsewhere, so those of us with a statewide reach or vision are not necessarily their target audience. Would you like to attend and enjoy the music and celebration? You should. Visit theweedbartv.com and buy tickets. Our best wishes to the Weed Bar folks on having a successful event. Now, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency is trying hard to bring our state's cities, villages, and townships into the cannabis business world. And to that end, they've announced a big statewide municipality summit on January 30th. The 2-hour Zoom meeting is targeted at local officials and decision makers, not consumers. And in order to attend, you must register by January 23rd with your municipal title, email, and contact information. The CRA is requesting all questions be submitted in advance, and it's easy to understand why the regulatory agency is making this push for additional cities to come online for cannabis businesses in 2023. There's a glut of product on the market, and it's creating a huge problem for the industry. The solution is either force the destruction of old inventory, place a moratorium on new growing licenses and a moratorium on new plants in the ground, or create more retail opportunities and destinations for that oversupplied market to go. The CRA has assembled a group of tools and resources to help cities find their way into the smoky world of our industry. Those tools include a 2-hour video where industry stakeholders, lawyers, and municipal officials answer many of the questions the CRA receives from local government officials, and also a 24-page municipal guide, which accomplishes the same thing. Both of those resources can be found on the CRA's website. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Did you ever think we'd get to see a cannabis awards show and the Golden Globes happening at the same time? Well, maybe we'll even start to see cannabis influencers and advocates receive their own mainstream accolades in our lifetime. After all, it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it wisely. That's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedgets filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weedgets filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCM TV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission and the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
As a broker, we have access to many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.